Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn. I'm Lauren Smith with the International Franchise Association, and we have a great 30 minutes lined up for you. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that we are recording today's webinar and will make it available later this evening on franchise.org. If you have any questions for today's speakers, please add them to the Q&A box and they will be addressed toward the end. Today's topic is streamlining franchise collections and payments with invoice-to-cash automation, and it is brought to us by Flywire. Here to provide today's discussion is Trip Roney, Head of Franchise Business at Flywire, and Chris Jordan, Senior Franchise Solutions Director at Flywire. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to Flywire for sponsoring today's Lunch and Learn. I'll go ahead and turn things over to you.
Thanks, Lauren. We appreciate it. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining. We know that you're all busy, and we appreciate you giving us a little bit of time today. As Lauren said, the topic today is streamlining franchise collections and payments with invoice-to-cash automation. The focus will be Flywire's accounts receivable automation and embedded payment solution. And from an agenda perspective, what we're going to do today is dive into some introductions. We'll jump into some of the common pain points associated with the franchisor fee collection process. Chris Jordan is going to jump in and do a demo real quick so you actually see live the solution that we offer and how that impacts your business. We'll jump out of that demo. We'll go back into some high-level views of how the Flywire solution supports this situation and help solve for some of these challenges. We'll jump into a use case, and then we hope there's some time for some Q&A. There will be a couple of polling questions in the middle, so please don't hesitate we actually appreciate it if you jump in and answer those. And I want to jump right in real quickly. As Lauren indicated, my name is Trip Roney. I'm head of franchise group here in the B2B vertical with Flywire, and I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Chris Jordan, who is the Director of Franchise Solutions for the team. Real quickly, I want to just highlight who Flywire is and what we do. Flywire provides AR automation with embedded payment software solutions. We are a publicly traded business. We have over 4,000 clients globally. We move roughly 25 billion in funds annually and globally. We provide local payment solutions for your franchisees around the world in over 240 countries and 140 currency pairs. And ultimately, we improve accounting team and franchise experience and connectivity, help get money in the bank faster and improve cash flow, and reduce costs along the way. That's a little bit about Flywire. So jumping into some of the challenges, Chris and I are going to try to have kind of an open dialogue here and keep this kind of upbeat as opposed to me just talking through slides. So again, don't hesitate to drop questions in the chat if you'd like, and we'll kind of answer those either as we go or at the end. First of all, when you look at what's happening today in global payments, and this is both domestic and international to a large extent, it gets very challenging, right? Specifically for franchise finance teams and franchisees, tons of manual processes, legacy systems, a lot of regulatory hurdles when you deal with international payments. Obviously, security concerns when you get into that as well, whether that's PCI compliance, fraud, things like that. Complex global transactions and evolving technologies. If you're an international brand, you already know a bunch of these things. If you're a domestic brand thinking about the idea of going into the international space, it's a challenging perspective, challenging things to do, and just to make sure we're here to cover some of those things from the payment perspective. A lot of these variables can create complex ecosystem around what should be just simply sending out an invoice and getting paid. So on that note, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks for joining. So yeah, as Trip mentioned, right, we're really here to help you guys understand how we can help you get paid easier. So franchisors really need a better way to manage their franchise fee programs. And if you think about what that does from an actual day-to-day standpoint, it really helps. It really puts a drain on your resources. You're talking about DSO, like how fast are you getting paid? Are you actually losing cash on a monthly basis? And then also, if you think about your relationship with your franchisee, I know that the Zors and Z's relationships are very important, is the franchisee also feels pain because they don't have a clear view of what they owe you. They don't have a clear view of why they're paying you. And so we try to reduce all that and just make your relationships better and make everything be a little more transparent between the Zors and the Z's.
Thanks, Chris. On that note, so we're just going to walk through a couple of the key pain points that we run into quite often in the franchising space. First of all, a lot of manual workflows. If you think about it, from invoice creation, even before that, sometimes a royalty calculation, invoice creation, disbursement of those invoices out to your franchisees, automated or some type of chasing. If you're dealing with short payments, non-payments, and so on, you have human beings chasing those folks for those payments. Obviously, you're dealing with short, late, or even non-payments, depending on jurisdictions. It's hard to get money out of, and so on. And all these things ultimately they impact cash flow. So at the end of the day, we know that these things are a challenge. And it's difficult for your franchisees to go source USD. So they're often having to go out to their bank, and there's manual process for them too, right? So ultimately, this is a challenge not only for your accounting teams, AR teams, but also for your franchisees. Chris?
Yeah, one thing we hear a lot of is whether you're having a problem getting paid or not, you have a lot of disparate systems in play. So quite often there's manual reconciliation of royalties. You're sort of, you're in an exchange system, you're in a royalty calculation system, you're trying to get something back into your ERP or your general ledger tool. And if you think about where your data sits and where your franchisees are, how do you actually help them understand, what's happening here? And so one thing we try to do is to really allow your franchisees to have a very clear visibility into their relationship with you, and that tends to reduce the friction. And also, if you think about going international, we remove a lot of barriers for franchisors to try to go international, and that allows you to speed up your growth and expansion.
Thanks, Chris. So ultimately, where does Flywire come in? So we've created this slide. It's very simple. By the way, this slide deck will be available to you later if Lauren hadn't already communicated that out. But we deliver value across this invoice to cash life cycle for franchising, and not only for the franchisors but also for the franchisees. From the beginning of this process of going out and the acquisition of new franchise owners that are going to come and buy into own a franchise, they're looking for processes that are already not legacy processes and things like that, but things that work. They want to come in and run the business, not have to manage through these challenging manual processes and so on. Of course, they want to know they're going to be able to get paid. We automate all processes here within the accounts receivable invoice to cash ecosystem, invoicing, the chasing, the payments. So we create the global payments, and you'll be able to see this within Chris's demo, exactly how a payment is made by a franchisee. And then reporting and reconciliation is automated as well. So I think at this point, Lauren is going to jump into one of the polling questions. And Lauren, you'll let me know when I can jump back in.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So it looks like a large percentage, 60% of the folks do not yet have international, but that means that 40% of the folks here do. So we're speaking to a decent part of the audience. And for those 60% that don't yet have international, we'd love to know after this if it's something that you're thinking about, if you're thinking about expanding in international markets, if so, which ones. Love to jump in and have some of those conversations and help you navigate that process. All right. On that note, so at this point, Chris is going to jump into the demo. So Chris, take it away. I'll stop sharing so you can do that. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Trip.
Yep.
All right. So I always have a caveat with this demo. So can everyone see a really cool dashboard, and you see our invoice to cash system called Invoiced up in the left-hand corner and Bright Path Horizons? Trip, are we good?
Believe so. Yeah.
Okay. So as people are aware, invoice to cash systems are pretty robust, and ours I think is robust than most. But I could spend 2 hours doing this. We're going to fly through this in about 7 or 8 minutes to give you guys an overview of what does an invoice to cash system mean for a franchisor and a franchisee. So the view you're in right now is the franchisor's view. So whatever data lives in your royalty calculation tool, whatever data lives in your ERP, however we can work with you to get that in our systems, this gives you a really clear view of your AR relationships. And so you can see up here, we've got some time to pay, DSO. You can even see in a snapshot who your top debtors are. All this is customizable, by the way. So if you look at the AR aging, you could start this at 45 days. You can have this be whatever you want. What's really nice is when you think through some of the ERPs we work in, it's a little bit hard to tell sort of what your day-to-day looks like and what you need to make sure you're chasing to get yourselves paid. So this action items section here is super helpful. So this is our dashboard. People find it very useful. I'm going to dive right in though to sort of what this all means to you. So think about sort of your list of franchisees, right? So obviously I like TV, so you can see there's a bunch of stuff here from TV. But basically this is a list of your customers. So these are the franchisees. This is still your view as the franchisor. And this allows you to see the relationships you have. And if you come in here and you say, oh, okay, oh, I see. Yeah. So this is the Bright Path Horizons franchise. This is the master in Europe. And then if you have master sub-franchise relationships, you can actually map those in here. We have a robust sort of parent-child relationship system, so we can do this however you need to do this. You can give visibility to masters, you can take visibility away, but this is your view of what this master and its subs owe to you guys. And so you can see if there's any chasing cadences happening. You can see a history of payments. You can see a history of email communications. This gives you a clear view of what you are doing with that actual move you guys over with that actual franchise. Does that make sense to everybody? So how does this help your franchise? So this is still your view, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to show you what your franchise sees. So the nice thing is this little link right here, I'm going to open what we call our payer portal, our customer portal. This is now your franchise's view. We use a tokenized technology that allows your franchises to come here without having to remember a username and password. I think we all have enough username and passwords in our life. So this comes in super handy. We see it reduce friction all the time. And so this is now your franchise. I'm in here as the Bright Path Horizons Europe Master Franchise. And they can see a snapshot of their account. They can see that they have an estimate to pay. They can see they have a balance due. This is the dashboard view for them. If you drill down one level deeper, you can even show them, they can come in here and see their statement. And so now, as I showed you on that previous screen, because they have sub-franchises, they can actually see all the invoices they owe across their master and across their sub-franchises. And if they then want to go in and actually see that invoice, they can drill in one step deeper and see that invoice. And what we get a lot of feedback on, we're talking to franchises and franchisors, is they want to have an open communication path to be able to explain to you what's going on. So let's say this is your royalty fee and it's $5,000. If the franchise has a problem with that or wants to communicate with you, they can easily send you a message right here that'll simply go straight into that action item and also get emailed to you. This allows you guys to have an open dialogue through this tool to keep everything consolidated in one place. And
Chris,
so where does this really start to
Chris,
matter? Yeah.
sorry, Chris, if I could jump in real quick. So one of the things that we find most impactful here is that a lot of the franchises we're talking to, the franchisees have no visibility to any of their invoices. They have to go scrub emails to try to find, the AR person that's chasing them a little bit might say, hey, I sent you this email last week, and they don't have any access to it, let alone their payment history and things like that. So this just really drives not only visibility, but really new levels of connectivity between the franchisee and the franchisor.
Yeah, good call out, Trip. One of the things I forgot to mention is in general, ERPs are really good at certain things. Systems of record are. What they're not good at is that level of transparency that Trip just mentioned. I don't know how many times I've had to go into my email and search for an invoice from my local plumbing company and go find their PDFs and figure out what I owe them. And so from here, okay, this is all cool, right? We're showing the visibility, but I need to get paid. So how do they actually pay? Super simple, right? They can actually come right in here and they can say, oh, yeah, I want to pay this. It's past due. And you know what? I want to go ahead and get ahead of this one. I'm going to pay this one too. I click next. And what's really nice, and this is all configurable, by the way, is if you have a great relationship with your franchises, which I know you guys do, they may have a dispute and may want to pay partial, or they may be tight on money. So you can actually have a setting enabled that allows them to pay partial. And if they do that, they can simply change what they pay here. And an example of this would be if they had gone to the invoice and said, hey, we actually only owe 4,000 for that month. We think your calculations are wrong. You can also disable that, by the way. So if you don't want them to be able to pay partial, we simply disable that during implementation. Now I click next. As you can see, these guys happen to have a stored payment method, but I'm going to actually show you what it looks like to go have them pay with a new payment method. And so here's where I really start to get into the beauty of Flywire from a payments company. We're a software and payments company, which is a very valuable combination. So you see over here, right? So this is you guys as the franchisor. You're going to really receive 11,500 US dollars. We're going to get through the data entry here. We're going to go to the next screen. And all of a sudden, your franchisee actually sees how to pay you in their local currency. So this happens to be GBP. This gives a lot of flexibility. It reduces friction. They don't have to try to source US dollars. We're managing all that FX conversion for you. We're making sure you guys get paid the right amount. And what's really cool, and I'm not going to go very far into this payment experience because I think you've all seen a credit card form, but what's really cool is if they pay you 8,870 GBPs, we deliver to you $11,500 in USD. We don't net settle, we gross settle. You get that full amount. You get that full amount in your bank account, and you're like, oh, this makes perfect sense now because I actually know I got 11,500 US dollars. Makes your reconciliation a lot easier. And back here, we actually will show you the history of those payments, and we'll automatically reconcile those invoices. And depending on the integration we go with or how data is flowing, you can start to reduce all your reconciliation time because either our system is automatically talking to your system and reconciling back and forth, or we have a very robust spreadsheet upload and download that we actually use with some major franchisors. They find it super easy and super helpful. And then from there, what's even cooler, I think, is I don't know if you guys have ever spent much time in ERPs trying to get reports out. There's some fancy degree you need to have to get those reports out. I've never figured out what the degree is. We make this so much easier for you. You just come in here to the report section. We've pre-built all these reports. Pretty much everything you can think of is in here. And if you start to think about the franchisor-franchisee relationship, I know one of the holy grails is, hey, can we get them to save a payment method so they just get charged as they owe? What's really cool is you can even come in here and start to see like, oh yeah, we have that. We can see an expiring cards report. You can start to see a lot of data in here in a much easier view than you can see it in your ERP or your system of record. And then you probably have franchises that, you know, maybe don't want to pay you sometimes. We offer a really cool system called chasing. And so a lot of chasing in ERPs is done at what's called the invoice level. So the minute one invoice hits 45 days overdue, NetSuite sends an email just about that invoice. We've built this really from the customer or the franchise-centric view. So if you think about that, you can actually build as many cadences as you want because maybe you've got a VIP franchise. But what's really cool is you can start to say, hey, I know I want to build a default chasing. I want to assign that to 80% of my franchises. And I just come in here and you can build all your steps. So we've built out an elaborate system in here. You can make it as simple as you want. You can have 3 steps. But what's really cool is you can actually start to get down here when your franchises aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And you can have escalations that go back to that action center and give you guys the ability to say, oh, wait, something needs to happen at a human level here. I just can't keep calling them. And then perhaps you've got franchises that you've had relationships with for 10 years. You may come in here and say, yeah, I don't really want to harass them very much. Like, honestly, I'm not even going to bother them until I get to 50,000 US dollars. And then you can even then say, hey, I want to keep this super light. I'm just going to do an initial outreach and I'm going to trigger an action item back in the dashboard and make a phone call because this is a VIP franchise and I value the relationship.
And what's also cool about that, Chris, is that in that chasing, that's actually a default. So you can set up different defaults. So it's not like you have to set something up for each franchisee. It's a set it and forget it type of chasing. So your AR team doesn't have to make phone calls and send emails and all those types of things. So it's really important part of the solution. Thanks, Chris. All right, I'm going to share my screen again now so that we can jump in. Let's see. Okay. All right, so having gone through that, Chris, thanks again for going through the demo. So what we want to do now is just kind of try to tie this together So we understand from the beginning of the conversation, what are some of the common pain points we see in the franchising space, both for franchisors and franchisees. We've gone through the demo. Now we want to kind of talk about Flywire solutions. So ultimately, our solutions transform the AR ecosystem and the relationship with your franchisees, right? So it's a two-way street between the franchisor and the franchisee. We know that in this space, it's quite different than a typical client and customer relationship. You view your franchisees really to be part of your family. So it's just a different type of cadence, that there needs to be a different type of relationship. And where there's a lack of connectivity and visibility, we're solving for that. We reduce and eliminate a lot of manual processes. Again, invoicing all the way through cash application. And what I mean by cash application is if you're invoicing for royalty fees and marketing fees and tech fees, we can split those payments into the appropriate accounts afterwards. That way, it's not something that you have to do from a manual reconciliation perspective. We're also, because of some of the reporting and things, everything is captured. One of the questions in the queue was, do we have open APIs and so on? We have, and Chris can speak to this, but we have many ways that we can integrate and implement and implement our solutions with whatever your system of record might be. Open APIs, webhooks, and so on. And Chris can again comment that in a moment. But so we understand the nature of that. We're eliminating a lot of those manual processes so that your team, your AR team, can be doing more important things, more strategic things within the business. Also, that reduces costs. And we're also eliminating that manual effort of your franchisees for having to go out to their banks and so on. We're improving business intelligence as well through the reporting functionality and the integrations. And ultimately, we're eliminating or at least reducing short payments, late payments, and non-payments, and improving your cash flow. Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Trip. Yeah, and so, sorry, I was just scanning through some of the answers, Trip. I don't know if you wanted to take the credit card fees one. Yeah, so if you think about really, where we come in here, right? So we can really make your tech stack start to be a lot smarter, right? I mean, I can only say it so many times. ERPs just don't offer visibility out to your actual franchises. And then when you start to think about the relationships you guys have, you spend a long time and you work very hard to build your franchisee relationship. This gives just another way to start to get loyalty and really improve their experience working with you as the franchisor. And then Trip, this is like how Flywire started basically, was if you think about us from a software and payments perspective, we have a banking network that's in, what is it, Trip, 240 countries or 140 countries, 240 currencies, and so, or the other way around. So you start to think about, hey, I want to go to UAE, or hey, I want to go to France. You can start to think a little bit more about, oh, I can focus on the franchisee experience. I don't necessarily have to worry about the banking and payments experience, because we can help move that money because we have entities in those locations already.
Great. And Chris, if you want to handle this one, I'll jump into some of these questions, okay?
Yeah, sounds great. So look, in the end, this is all about what data are you putting into the Invoice-to-Cash system, right? And so if you start feeding the right data into the Invoice-to-Cash system, then you start having these super simple communication paths with your payers. You saw it in the demo. I know I went through that super quick. Always happy to give longer demos. But really you start thinking through how easy that is. And then you start thinking about, from a franchisor supporting the franchisee's relationship, it also gives you a nice, simple way to have communications. And then when you talk about payments, you talk about Flywire's support system. We're in 14 countries. We have a follow the sun model. So we can also handle your payment support. And so if you have international franchises, they don't need to call you at 1 a.m. They can call one of our actual locations that's already open. And then I know I went through the payment experience super fast, but look, our whole bread and butter of past software is we allow your payers to pay however they want to pay. Local currency, card, bank transfer, ACH. We try to give you guys as much flexibility as possible. By the way, you can choose how to do this, right? If you say, oh, I never want someone to pay with card, that's great. We can turn off card. If you say, I want to only allow franchisees in certain countries to pay with card, we can configure that for you as well. And then it's a super intuitive self-serve franchisee portal. So what you saw there was the ability for the franchisee to see their relationship with you. They can get receipts, they can see the history. And by the way, one of the ways that this system is used a lot is if you have a franchise manager, you've got someone out there trying to close deals, they can actually easily go into the system and see their relationship with existing franchises. So they may understand like, oh, I've got franchises in these countries that are super loyal or paying really well. I want to sort of chase more franchises in that country. I see we have problems getting money out of certain countries. Maybe I'll slow down my expansion in those countries.
Right,
Chip?
thanks. Yeah, thanks, Chris. I did answer the question in the chat, and I think through the dialogue we had answered a couple of the questions that were in there before. If not, just throw it back in, then we'll make sure we get after it. So just kind of wrapping up, and then I'm going to jump into a use case, so we have a few minutes for Q&A. Ultimately, Flywire provides, as I've mentioned already, complete visibility for both your accounting teams as well as your franchisees. By doing so, we're enhancing the experience by eliminating, manual processes. Definitely, as you can see, we're creating that modern payment experience. You think about an Amazon payment experience or even an Uber experience. We're used to those automated situations in our personal life, and then we come into, the business world, and it's so challenging to make a payment specifically internationally. So we're improving those scenarios, lowering costs along the way. Because of the way our banking network is set up, we're eliminating intermediary banks that might take fees in the middle. So we're reducing fees there, introducing the cost of an international wire because we provide those local solutions, and of course, eliminating a lot of costs associated with manual workflows and so on. Ultimately, all these things accelerate cash flow. From a use case perspective, and again, this will be part of the deck, so you'll be able to read through this later, so I'm just going to touch on it, but we have great relationship with Jim Perkins, who's responsible for global sales of the Dickey's Barbecue franchise. And they chose us a couple years ago, actually, because of some of the challenge they had, as you see up top here, collecting payments, franchisees from challenging international markets, slow manual siloed AR processes, and some of those were just legacy systems that they had. They were thinking about some type of solution, but with all the technology out there, it's hard to think of the right way to go. I think with Flywire, we were able to offer not only account receivable automation, but also embedded payments instead of having to have multiple sources for that one solution. We bring that one solution to the table. And obviously, someone mentioned the idea of, do we have APIs and connectivity and so on? And Chris hit on this very well during the demo, that we have multiple ways to integrate and so on, regardless of what your ERP may be. And we can even navigate through some legacy systems. If you're using something which a lot of franchisors do for royalty calculation and so on, at that point that the invoice is made, how do we connect? We can certainly talk with you about how to drive those integrations and implementations there as well. And as you can see, we've been through a lot of the solutions, so I don't want to belabor this with this use case, but just a great use case. It'll really help them grow internationally, expand, because we remove the challenge of them having to set up bank accounts around the world and so on. We've already done that heavy lifting, so they can go out and run their business and really drive for their franchisees to be successful in these new locations. So on that note, Lauren, I think we have a final polling question, and then we'll try to open up for a minute or two of Q&A. All right, thanks, Lauren. So I don't see any additional questions in the chat. If anyone has some questions, we have about a minute left, and we're happy to stick around and go over for a few minutes as well. Don't hesitate to jump in and ask us a few questions.
Amazing. I'm seeing one in the chat. So in your experience, what systems or processes do franchisors usually have in place to manage AR and payments?
Oh, that's a fantastic question, and I wish I had an hour. Honestly, it tends to be pretty disparate, right? So you've got a lot of companies that built out their own royalty calculation tools. So they've got a custom homegrown royalty calculation tool. Quite often, they're basically ingesting data via files sent from masters or from franchises. And then there's a general ledger tool. But I mean, we've had conversations with major franchisors who have 4 to 5 systems in play just to get through their royalty calculation monthly process. But in general, yeah, there's definitely a system of record, ERP, and then there's something they're using, whether it's a third party or whether it's themselves, to calculate the royalties.
And we have time for just one more. What does an integration with Flywire typically look like?
Uh, fantastic question. I mean, look, I'll do the typical solutions guy thing. It depends, right? I mean, if you have a system of record like NetSuite that has your final invoices, that's actually a pretty slick integration. Any of the major ERPs we can integrate to in under 3 months. We have multiple ways to handle those integrations. And then if you start getting into sort of these more custom situations, our open APIs are very robust. We have many clients who have integrated to us without us even paying attention because they're so simple to use. Our documentation is first class, and so that all becomes super seamless. And then honestly, I'm going to repeat it because this surprised me sort of as we moved more in the invoice to cash space in the past few years. The spreadsheet uploads are so simple that if you have 4 or 5 countries that you want to work with us on and you don't want to do an integration, you can spend 5 minutes a week doing spreadsheet uploads and downloads, and it reduces so much other manual work because your payment collections and reconciliation become much more automated, even though I know I said spreadsheet upload.
Thanks, Chris. And I think as a final statement, one of the things that we really work hard to do in the franchise space is try to ensure that we have flexibility in how our solution interfaces with your business. We know that every business is a little different. Every franchisor has different priorities within their business. So we have a very flexible solution. It's not you have to get the whole package, a la carte type situation to make sure that we're really providing the functionality that you need and prioritize. So on that note, Lauren, I'll let you wrap up, but I know that on the last slide on the deck, when you get it, is my contact information. Feel free to reach out via email and we'll be happy to connect.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trip and Chris. This was excellent content and excellent feedback from all of you. We really do appreciate it. Again, this webinar was recorded and along with the presentation deck will appear on our website early this evening. You'll be able to find that at franchise.org. Thank you very much again to our speakers and the Flywire team. And again, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and healthy. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.